How Arthur Became King, The Sword and the Stone. In the days of old, Britain was ruled by King Uther Pendragon. The dragon was his emblem, and he was a mighty warrior and a great ruler. He was not only the greatest man in battle, but he was wise too, for he followed the counsel of Merlin, a great magician and seer. Merlin could cast magic spells and change shapes to look like an animal or another person. He was called a seer because he could see the future. For everyone, that is, except himself. Uther Pendragon had a son named Arthur. One day, when Arthur was still young, Merlin had a terrifying vision. He foresaw that Uther Pendragon would soon die from a plague that was sweeping the land. And he saw that, because Arthur was only a baby, many of the other noblemen would try to take his place as king. Some might even try to harm him, and war would break out. So Merlin secretly gave Arthur into the care of a noble knight, Sir Ector, who did not know he was protecting the king's son and heir. Sir Ector raised Arthur along with his own son, Kay. Just as Merlin had predicted, Uther Pendragon died, and the British lords began to feud with each other over who should be king. For years, Britain was torn with warfare and strife. When Merlin felt that time had come, he went to the Archbishop of Canterbury and said that if the Archbishop would call the lords of the land to London at Christmas, a miracle would reveal who was the rightful king of Britain. The Archbishop did as Merlin asked. On Christmas Day, all the lords attended church. When they came out, they found in the churchyard a square marble stone. In the middle of it was an anvil, and into the anvil was thrust a sword. The stone gripped the naked sword by the point, and on the blade was written in gold letters, "Whosoever pulls out this sword from the stone and anvil is the true-born king of Britain." Each lord tried to pull the sword out, but all failed. News of the sword and the stone spread, with an invitation to all of the knights of the land to come try to pull out the sword. A tournament was announced for New Year's Day, at which any knight could make the attempt. All the great lords met again on New Year's Day. Among them were Sir Ector and his son, Sir Kay, who had recently been made a knight. Arthur, only 15 years old and completely unaware of his kingly birth, acted as Kay's assistant, or squire. After the church service, all rode in a merry company to the tournament field. When Sir Kay realized he had left his sword behind, he asked Arthur to ride back and get it for him. Arthur rode as fast as he could, but found the door locked. Arthur had seen the sword and the stone, but did not know of the legend surrounding it. He said to himself,
"I will ride to the churchyard and take the sword and the stone, for my brother shall not be without a sword this day."
Arthur was alone at the churchyard, for everyone was at the tournament. He grasped the sword by the hilt and gave it a light, quick pull. Out it came. Arthur jumped onto his horse, rode to the tournament field, and gave Kay the sword. Now, being a knight, Kay had been told the meaning of the sword and the stone. He recognized at once what it might mean to see Arthur grasping the sword before him. Unwisely, he tried to deceive his father, saying,
"Sir, look, here is the sword of the stone, so I must be king of this land."
Sir Ector was amazed. He took Kay and Arthur back to the church and asked Kay to swear how he came by the sword. Frightened, Kay now admitted,
"Sir, my brother Arthur brought it to me."
Then Kay and his father looked at young Arthur. Sir Ector remembered how Merlin had brought Arthur to him in secret many years earlier. Merlin had told him he was to bring the boy up as his own son. In time, he would learn who the child truly was.
"How did you get the sword?"
Sir Ector asked Arthur. Arthur told him exactly what he had done.
"Now,"
said Sir Ector to Arthur.
"you must be king of this land."
"I?"
said Arthur, astonished.
"How can that be?"
"No man could have pulled out this sword unless he was the rightful king of this land,"
said Sir Ector.
"Now let me see whether you can put the sword back as it was and pull it out again."
"That is quite easy,"
said Arthur. There in the frosty churchyard stood the white stone with the anvil, but no sword in the anvil. Arthur thrust the sword back into the anvil, which held the blade snugly. To see that there was no trick, Sir Ector tried to pull it out. He could not move it at all.
"Now you,"
he said to Sir Kay, who pulled with all his might but could not move it.
"Now you,"
Sir Ector said to Arthur.
"Very well,"
said Arthur, and he pulled it out easily. Sir Ector and Sir Kay knelt down before Arthur.
"My own dear father and brother?"
cried the boy nervously.
"Why do you kneel down before me?"
Then Sir Ector told Arthur that he was not really his son, and that Merlin had brought him as a baby to be raised in his household.
"Sir,"
said Sir Ector,
"I will ask no more of you but that you make my son, your foster brother Sir Kay, servant in charge of your lands."
"That shall be done,"
answered Arthur.
and no other man shall have the office while he and I live.
The 3 men went to the archbishop to tell what had happened. Arthur took the sword in both hands and laid it on the altar where the archbishop was standing. Then he knelt down, and the grandest knight present stepped forward to make Arthur a knight. The archbishop set the crown of Britain on Arthur's head, and Arthur swore to treat all, high and low, with justice all the days of his life. The people threw up their caps and shouted, "Hurrah!" At last, a true king had come to punish the wicked and defend the poor.